Having been to India, animals play such a huge role in the culture of India. It represents their gods, and yet I saw a lot of cruelty to animals in many different ways. Hey, it's Ron Magill here at Zoom Miami. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Today, I have the profound, distinct privilege to actually be able to interview one of my heroes. Over 25 years ago, I traveled to India, and I was working on a different project there with some tigers, and I got to meet a man named Kartick Satyanarayan. He was working with sloth bears. There was a culture that had been going on for generations, where the calendar people were taking sloth bears and making them dance in the street, the dancing bears. It was something that had gone on again for generations. And Kartick, I want to say pretty much single-handedly, ended that practice just a few years ago. So it's with just the most profound gratitude that I welcome Kartick to our little episode today. Kartick, it's so great to see you here all the way from India.
Thank you, Ron. It's always a delight to be here, and I'm so happy to see you. And I remember going back to over 20 years ago when I met you in India, and we've come a long way, my friend.
We have come a long way, and what you've been able to do, Kartick, I mean, I think we talk about the sloth bears as being the beginning, and that was what a lot of people thought was impossible. I mean, I remember going there and thinking, he's never going to get all the sloth bears off the streets. This is part of the calendar tradition. It's something that is going to be there for generations to come. How did you do that? What was the success? How did you reach that success to get those bears off the street?
It was seen as something that was not at all possible. And everybody told us that when we started Wildlife SOS. But seeing the bears on the street suffer was something that I just couldn't come to terms with. Something had to be done. But knowing that it had to be done and knowing how to do it were two different things. And so I had to deep dive into this. So my co-founder Geeta and I created Wildlife SOS. We spent 2.5 years just working with the community, trying to understand what was the problem. And we realized, after working with them, documenting the trafficking of the bear cubs that was going on, where the bear cubs were coming from, and understanding that it was really entwined deeply in their poverty. It was all about their poverty. And we realized that we weren't going to solve this problem by just looking at the sloth bears. We had to do a whole cleansing of the whole system, working with the community, helping them so we could help the bears. And it was going to be a solution that had to be long-term sustainable for conservation. So we started working with the community, helping them fix their problems. So we started by sending children to school. And by the end of it, it took us 17 years to solve this problem completely. Most people thought it was impossible. Most people thought it would take over 50 years. But we sent over 17,000 children to school, paid for their school fees, their books, their school uniforms. We empowered over 3,000 families by giving the women carpet weaving skills, things like that. And every single family had to be helped.
How did this dancing bear tradition start? I mean, what was it? Where did they get the bears from?
So this tradition of dancing bears is quite brutal. And it started about 400 years ago when the Mughal emperors had these nomadic gypsies who came in from Persia with their bears and their monkeys, and they would perform in the ramparts of the fort to entertain the harem of the Mughal emperors, because the women weren't allowed to be seen in public, so they would hide inside the fort, and the women would be veiled, and they would watch these guys, the Kalandar communities, bring their bears and wrestle with them and dance in the fort ramparts. And so even today there are these ancient routes from the villages back into the back entries of the forts.
And how do they get these bears? I mean, where do the calendar people get the bears? How do they acquire the bears?
You'd be shocked, and this is what shocked me. Every single bear was taken from the wild as a cub. The mother bears were killed, the baby bears were snatched, and they were poached. Then they would be sold at underground markets, where they would have their teeth shattered, a red-hot iron poker shoved through their muzzle and a rope put through it. And then they would, every time the rope was pulled, the bear would learn to jump up and down in pain, but it looked like it was hopping and dancing. That's how the term dancing bear came, but it was really swaying in pain.
For me, one of the greatest conservation accomplishments in my lifetime is when I received that email from you saying, the last dancing bear has been taken off the streets in India. I think it's one of the greatest rewards any conservationist could ever hope to get. And I know you've been given the Conservation Medal, a lot of awards from the San Diego Zoo, from a lot of awards, but that's got to be something that just is rooted in your heart. I get emotional thinking about that feeling of all of people telling you these bears, that's forever, it's tradition, it's hundreds of years old, and then the last bear comes off the street.
Yes, we ended up getting 628 bears off the street. Wow. And looking into the eyes of these bears, Ron, I can tell you, there's something so deep that comes out when you look at these bears.
I say that, and I get emotional thinking about it, because I remember going to the sanctuary in Agra with you, and I remember those bears coming up to the fence and looking at me, and I remember seeing the scars of where that rope went through their nose and seeing their teeth missing, and then a look of, I hate to sound so anthropomorphic, but a look of gratitude, a look of peace.
That it was a lesson that was worthwhile. And seeing the gratitude in the eyes of those bears taught us lessons that we really, every single effort that we made, every obstacle we had to overcome, every struggle we had to combat was worth it. And so from that, we took those lessons and applied it to human-wildlife conflict with tigers and leopards. We now have leopard sanctuaries and tiger sanctuaries.
Really?
We then started working with 3 other species of bears: black bears, Asiatic black bears, and brown bears, and sloth bears in the wild as well. So we do a lot of human-bear conflict mitigation. And we've been working with elephants since 2009. And we've set up India's first elephant hospital, first elephant ambulance, first elephant jacuzzi, and we also have India's first elephant conservation and care center. So we've really taken it above and beyond. We are now working with communities that used to poach, and we've turned them from poachers to protectors. And they now work on our, as field investigators and our informer networking system.
And I think the magic of what you've been able to do is to educate these communities, to give them alternative, teach them how to work with tapestries, different things like that. That's the magic of everything that Wildlife SOS does. I've seen the documentaries on television of your rescue attempts. At the same time, you've had to deal with some bad actors. What are those challenges? I mean, I know we talk about here on this side of the world, I don't think people realize the extent of illegal wildlife trade.
Absolutely. Illegal wildlife trade is a $29 billion industry worldwide. And we do have a lot of bad actors. We have hostile gangs that come after us. We have to be prepared for that. And someone's got to do it. So it's rather be me than somebody else, because I know I will not make a mistake, and I know that I will do this till my last dying breath. Conservation is what my life is all about. And the challenges that we do combat on a day-to-day basis is sometimes corruption, but in some cases it's just hardcore wildlife cartels. They've been very organized now, very much like drug cartels. And we found when we overlay our intelligence information, the same gangs that do drugs and guns are also doing wildlife trafficking.
Really?
Because wildlife trafficking is less risk, there's less penalty than drugs and guns, and the profits are huge. So it's very lucrative for some gangs to combine it when they're doing it.
When you say it's less penalty, is that something that needs to change? Do we need to make these laws stricter to make people understand the importance?
We have great laws, but sometimes implementation of the laws and detection of these crimes are very complex.
I want to tell you, I was one of those people that was misinformed, miseducated. I went to India and I thought, well, this is a beautiful thing. They paint the elephants. They ride them in on these ceremonies. This is a beautiful thing. And it wasn't until I was really educated by what you enlightened me on that I said to myself, oh my gosh, I'm ashamed of myself that I even thought of that back then.
What I've seen on the ground that goes with elephants, elephants are worshipped in India. Yes. They're a holy creature. The elephant god is the god of all beginnings, Ganesh. And there's not an opportunity, there's not a wedding, there's not a job appointment that, that children go and express gratitude to Lord Ganesh for a wedding or a job opportunity or even a visa for that matter. But the same elephant god is abused and mistreated on the streets. And there are over 270 street elephants that are used for begging on the streets, very much like bears. Yes, and that is really shocking. Of course, we have about nearly 3,000 elephants in captivity in India. But I think what's so important for us to remember, Ron, and what I've seen, is that every single elephant that's in captivity is taken from the wild. Every single elephant begging on the street is an elephant that's not in the forest and cannot be put back. And that breaks my heart. That really outrages me. And we've also seen that when people ride elephants, it damages their spinal cord, causes irreparable damage to their back. And they're not an animal they may have been used for riding, but it's not essential for human beings to ride these elephants. We have much more mechanized, modern systems that can take us through the jungle. We don't need elephants to do that. And if they're used for anti-poaching, that's a different thing. But to use them for weddings and street begging and parades and ceremonies and paint them, the lead paint goes into their skin and causes irreparable damage because the lead goes and assimilates into each cell of their body. And these are things that leave them completely distressed. And these animals can never get back. When these elephants are used on the streets, their feet are so badly damaged, there's glass pieces and pieces of metal and nails embedded as foreign objects inside. And these animals can't speak. So we have to speak for them. When I built that hospital, we didn't think the infrastructure would be so handy. But we have now helped over 300 elephants on the streets in India. We've got India's first mobile clinic out there, going from station to station, village to village, city to city, state to state, helping these elephants that we can't immediately rescue, but at least we can give them mercy and relief out there in the field. And that is changing so many things. It's giving so much of relief to animals that would otherwise just die without seeing a day of kindness or a day of compassion. And they just die waiting for help.
You are an icon, you're a role model, you're an inspiration. I feel privileged to call you a dear friend. We are privileged to have you here at Zoo Miami and looking forward to continue supporting Wildlife SOS and the incredible work you do. Wildlife SOS is an excellent example of an organization that is saving animals in the wild where they belong. Zoos like Zoo Miami must continue to support these organizations and others like it to ensure that animals can occur in the wild for future generations.
Thank you, Rob.
Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you.